Welcome to Storytime, brought to you by the OWSCyCon2019, the online book event of the year.
Fluffy was furious. Her tail bristled and twitched as she paced up and down on the professor's long desk. Above the desk, the big screen showed a web page with a news article. 10,000 GAB pets euthanized in Mumbai. Euthanized? Euthanized? Why don't they call it what it is, said Fluffy. Murder, clear and simple. Her voice emanated from the computer speakers, even as her words unfurled across the bottom of the screen like news scrawl. Lately, Fluffy had been surfing the web every day, reading article after article about the efforts to eradicate GAB, genetically altered brain, animals and diatribes written by animal revolutionaries advocating a GAB uprising. The professor looked at the article and shook his head sadly. They're doing the same thing here, he said, but EPS controls the media, so we don't hear about it. There's a big demonstration in Haynes Park tomorrow. Can we go, Dad? No, said the professor. It's just what EPS and his thug cops want, an excuse to beat and arrest more people and animals. Don't you see, Fluffy? Government by the corporations is failing. The triumvirate needs this trumped-up terror scare to distract the public. The GABs are a great target because they're not human. There's been no terrorism. They haven't done anything beyond rhetoric, some vandalism and theft and a few protests. Well, maybe we should, said Fluffy. Maybe our only hope is to rise up against the human oppressors and fight for our rights. Fluffy was an exceptionally intelligent feline, even by 2135 standards. She had a lovely white face that peaked in a star in the center of her forehead. The rest of her was mostly gray and black tabby, but her chest, paws, and underbelly were pure white. She had a long, thick fur and a bushy tail and inquisitive green eyes that were outlined in black as if she were wearing eye makeup. Professor James Rurden, the human Fluffy called Dad, was a once handsome, graying man about 60 with roomy blue eyes and a ruddy complexion. Humans are scum, Fluffy, make no mistake about that, said the professor. But don't try to match them in violence. No other species on the planet is as vicious. Don't try to beat humans at their game. Make them play yours. But what is our game, Dad? I don't want bloodshed, but the humans are killing my fellow GABs by the thousands. And what about all the human supporters? We don't even know what's happening to them. I can't just stand by and watch. GABs have unique skills, said the professor. Hone them. Make yourselves invaluable to humans with your powers of telepathy and telekinesis. It was only 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the professor was already in his cups. He had his reasons for drinking and being bitter. Once a prominent and respected writer and the most popular teacher in the English department at Kingston University, he had resigned in disgrace when his colleagues, solely out of envy for his dynamic and innovative teaching methods and the love of his students, had set him up to be caught in a compromising position with a female student. They had hired the girl to entrap him, and to his eternal regret he had gone for the bait. It had all started with the mouse brain experiments, way back in 2015, 120 years ago. Scientists had implanted elements of human DNA called enhancers into the brains of unborn mouse embryos. The resultant mice were born with brains that were 12% larger than normal mice brains. These new mice were called genetically altered brain animals, or GABs. This and the many subsequent experiments were all done with the intention of learning more about the evolution of the human brain, and what made the human species evolve with a brain that was so superior to the rest of the animal kingdom. At the time, some people laughingly speculated that this might cause animal brains to become equal to human brains somewhere down the line. Scientists dismissed this as not being a possibility for thousands of years. But something had happened. When they started enlarging the brains of domesticated animals, dogs, cats, and the occasional pig, and those animals made and had offspring, the evolutionary process of their brains went haywire, and animal brains started evolving at a frightening rate. Much the same as global warming had spun out of control in the late 21st century and turned Kingston, New York into the largest seaport on the eastern seaboard. Their bodies stayed the same as their brains evolved exponentially over generations. To compensate for their physical limitations, such as the shape of their palates and tongues preventing them from speaking, and their lack of opposable thumbs preventing them from grasping or pulling a trigger, GAB animals gradually started to develop telepathic and telekinetic powers. At first, these expressed themselves as random acts of vandalism, such as moving valuable objects off their shelves and smashing them when they were displeased by their masters. But now they had developed these abilities, enabled them to open doors, feed themselves, and turn electronic devices on and off. Humans, egged on by their corporate rulers, responded in a predictably human manner, with fear and hatred. They figured if these animals continued to proliferate, while human population was declining, they would soon take over and subjugate the humans, just as humans had done to animals for so many thousands of years. The triumvirate, the troika of the world's most powerful corporations who ruled the planet, decided to round up and suppress the troublemakers, outlawing animal access to computers, denouncing animal activities as terrorists. Ultimately, they instituted a worldwide policy of exterminating all GAB animals found without a human guardian. When computers became thought-activated, the animals used it to blog, proclaiming their equality to humans and demanding their freedom. When voices became available, enabling GABs to speak out loud through computer speakers, Fluffy chose the voice of Katharine Hepburn, a film actress who had lived 200 years ago, because she sounded defiant. Fluffy and the professor lived in the fashionable Upper East Side of Kingston, on the 150th floor of a high-rise overlooking the Kingston Harbor and the bay beyond. The professor's late wife, a woman of means from an old New York family, had bought the apartment, and the professor had inherited it when she died 5 years ago. Since then, the professor had led a solitary life and rarely interacted with other humans. And, at 5 years old, Fluffy had never interacted with anyone other than the professor. They had been each other's sole companions since she was a kitten. Every day he would continue her education, recommending books which she had read on her own small tablet, great literature, modern fiction, memoirs, biographies, and history. Neither of them was too keen on math or science, but Fluffy studied biology and genetics to learn the history of her kind. Today, about a third of all the mice, dogs, and cats, and about an eighth of all the pigs on Earth were GABs. At night, when the computers went off, Fluffy and the professor reverted to the traditional non-verbal relationship between man and cat. Fluffy would spend long hours purring in his lap while he brushed the tangles out of her fur or petted her and stroked her head in just the right way. She loved it when he read her Shakespeare sonnets or her favorite poems, the one about the tiger by William Blake. But best of all were the movies. They both loved to watch the old movies made in the early 20th century. The professor would run them before going to sleep. Fluffy would sit beside him on the bed and stare in fascination at these visions of an ancient black and white world, where people lived wildly, passionately, where cars and trucks and trains made loud noises, and where the only place animals spoke was in cartoons. When it was time to go to sleep, she would nuzzle up in the crook of his armpit and fall asleep, breathing in that reassuring essence. To Fluffy, it was the smell of safety. The next day, they watched a demonstration in the park on the big screen. Pro-animal rights people marched, carrying signs that said things like, "All beings are equal," and "Stop the killing," and GAB animals marched without their tracking collars, levitating signs over their heads that said things like, "If I can do this, I can leave free." Seeing animals do these things on TV scared the hell out of the ignorant masses. Soon the riot cops arrived and turned the peaceful demonstration into a riot. They tear-gassed the crowd and rounded up as many protesters as they could. They stuffed them into big trucks, animals and some, humans and others, and carted them off to God knows where. The professor turned off the screen and they sat in silence. At length, Fluffy spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about Jack lately." "Who?" Fluffy looked at him. "My brother. Jack, the one you didn't take." The professor looked sheepish. She was right, of course. He should have taken Jack, even though he thought they were just ordinary cats.
This story time was read by Virginia Carraway Stark and brought to you in conjunction with the OWSCyCon 2019. OWSCyCon runs from May 17th through May 19th. You can find us at OWSCyCon.ourrightside.com. Again, OWSCyCon.ourrightside.com. We have events happening across all genres. If you are a reader, you cannot afford to miss this event. You never know. You may just find your next best read.